counsel, members of the jury, may it please the court. The fall of 2014 was business as usual at the Black Bear Casino here in Midlands. Customers filled the table hoping the chips would fall in their favor, the spin of the slot machines sparkling in their eyes, and the chance for quick riches bringing them back for more. There was one person who won night after night at Black Bear, its owner, Avery Bancroft. And with every customer that walked through his casino's doors, the defendant was lining his pockets with more and more money. But Mr. Bancroft wasn't content with just the income from Black Bear. He longed for a second casino, and when the chance came to do just that in the fall of 2014, he jumped at the chance. There was just one thing in the defendant's way. A vote before the Midlands Gambling Commission, he worried he'd lose. But the defendant wasn't going to stop. He was willing to do anything to secure a second casino for himself, and in his pursuit of that dream, he risked it all. He doubled down and busted with a bribe to Chase Covington. Members of the jury, in a normal bribery case, we the prosecution would have the burden to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant committed bribery. But in a moment, the defense is going to come before you, and they're going to admit that Avery Bancroft did bribe Chase Covington. That's the defense's decision. It's part of their strategy in today's case in taking on an affirmative defense of entrapment. Simply put, that affirmative defense means that at the end of today's trial, you're going to have two ways to find the defendant guilty. First, you can find him guilty because the defense fails to prove to you that it's more likely than not that Avery Bancroft only committed this crime because the police persuaded him to do it. Or you can find the defendant guilty because we, the state, proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Bancroft was predisposed to bribery before he was ever contacted by the police. With that burden in mind, pay particular attention to the testimony of the defendant's own head of security, Danny Hoy, today. Mrs. Hoy will take the stand, and she will tell you about a number of deliberate acts the defendant took to conceal meetings with Mrs. Bancroft. She'll tell you about a number of blind spots that security cameras don't capture in the Black Bear Casino. And not only that Mr. Bancroft knew about and did not act to eliminate those blind spots, but that he actually asked about the specific location of the very blind spot where he bribed Chase Covington the day before the trial. In light of those actions by the defendant, the defense wanted to try to establish that Mr. Bancroft had been persuaded to commit bribery prior to that day. So they hired an expert, Dr. Reese Warren. But the defense won't be calling Dr. Warren today. His findings just didn't match their narrative in this case. So we, the prosecution, will bring Dr. Warren to the stand to allow you, the members of the jury, to hear the full story. Listen as Dr. Warren takes this stand and tells you that the investigation in today's case followed the best practices of constructing a conversation in an undercover investigation, and that the police avoided conversational strategies that can lead to entrapment. Finally, members of the jury, you'll hear from the state's informant in today's case, the defendant's own personal assistant, Corey Hyde. Mr. Hyde set up a number of meetings between Mr. Bancroft and Mrs. Covington in the lead up to the spring of 2015. Pay particular attention to the part of Mr. Hyde's testimony where he reveals to you that this wasn't the first time that Avery Bancroft used money to get what he wanted. At the end of today's trial, members of the jury, in spite of the complexities in today's case, your decision is going to come down to one simple question. Do you believe the defendant only committed this crime because the police persuaded him to do it, or that Mr. Bancroft doubled down and busted? By the end of today's trial, the evidence and testimony presented will leave but one clear answer to that question. For that reason, at the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Julia Gentili, will come before you. She'll ask you to return the only just verdict in today's case and find the defendant guilty.